Yes, Bimanto, it was a very interesting televised session, the first discussion that was developed with the World Economic Forum in East Asia with Berita Satu. It was the aspirations of inspirational Indonesia with speakers, Hans-Paul Berkner, chairman of the Boston Consulting Group, Kishore Mahbubani, the dean of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy of the National University of Singapore. We had Budi Gunadi Sadikin, the chief executive officer of Bank Mandiri, Marsudi Syuhud Sahudi. He is the general secretary of the Nahdlatul Ulama Indonesia, Rini Sumarno, minister of state-owned enterprise of Indonesia. Amanda Putri Widarmono, founder of the We Teachers Indonesia, and it was moderated by our very own editor-in-chief of Globe Asia, Shoaib Kagda. And it was a very interesting topic, and I think Kishore himself will explain how interesting the discussion this morning was about what the future holds for Indonesia.
Well, I think, I attend discussions like this all the time around the world. And normally when the discussion begins, I can predict what's going to happen. And it's often nothing new. What was surprising was that I learned so much from the discussion today. And what came through very clearly, number one, was the sense of optimism about Indonesia. That's a very powerful force, optimism. And also a sense of confidence in the future. And also, frankly, what is equally surprising was an open discussion of the challenges that Indonesia also faces. So, I mean, it wasn't, everything's rosy kind of thing. So, and I think people should watch that discussion very carefully. They want to get a sense of the complexity of the Indonesian story.
Right. I would like to stress on, there was a very good question, the first question that Shoaib had on you is, democracy enough for Indonesia?
Well, democracy is never enough. I mean, this idea, unfortunately, at the end of the Cold War, the West developed an ideological belief in democracy. And they said, hey, if you become democratic, you'll succeed. Excuse me, Yugoslavia went democratic and fell apart. Ukraine went democratic and the country is struggling in a civil war. Democracy is never enough. You need to develop strong institutions, you need to develop a culture of tolerance, a culture of understanding of each other, and that is Indonesia's great strength. As I said in the discussion, Indonesia has demonstrated that it's one of the most resilient countries in the world, and so that is a strength that is holding together Indonesian democracy. But democracy doesn't deliver economic development. Democracy doesn't deliver poverty reduction. All that's got to come from the right economic policies. And my concern today about Indonesia is that as Indonesia is entering one of its most promising moments ever in its history, there is unfortunately among some Indonesian businessmen a desire to become more nationalist, a desire to close the Indonesian economy, and that will. And if Indonesia does that, it'll make the mistake like Brazil did, which is rely on its domestic market. And any country that relies on the domestic market cannot succeed.
But can others misunderstood the closed economy as into protecting Indonesia's own economy, especially in light of the Asian economic community when everything is open in the region?
Yeah, I think but the ASEAN Economic Community, as you know, will be launched in November this year, and in the next 6 months are very critical in terms of countries trying to open up their markets as much as possible. Now, I'm the first to acknowledge that when you open up your markets, you get immediate short-term disruptions. This is normal. So some industries might become uncompetitive. That also is normal. But what's more important is that the overall body of the Indonesian economy will become much, much stronger as a result of opening up. As Deng Xiaoping famously said, when he opened the Chinese economy, he said, when I open the windows, some flies will come in, but that's okay. The fresh air will come in and also revive the Chinese economy. So I think the lesson of history is very, very clear on this. And you know, I feel very sad for Brazil because Brazil is a country of tremendous opportunity. I think its per capita income, if I'm not mistaken, is much higher than Indonesia's, but it is now struggling because they have been reluctant to open up to global competition.
Okay. So now this is a chicken and egg thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? Do we want to increase our competitiveness and open our market, or do we open our market and increase competitiveness right at that follow and sue?
I think, well, instead of calling it a chicken and egg situation, I would call it a virtuous spiral. Because the more you open up the economy, the more competitive you become, and the more competitive you become, the more investments you get, the more economic growth you get, the more poverty reduction you get, and then that spurs another round of growth again. And that's basically the big China story that we are witnessing in the world. And it's a great paradox, you know. India is the world's largest democracy, and China is the world's largest non-democracy. But in terms of economic performance, China is done far better than India, because China has opened up its economy more than India has, which is amazing. So my answer to your question, democracy is never enough. It's about other things that have to go along with democracy also.
And you also mentioned that one of the challenges Indonesia, or one of the danger that might face Indonesia is complacency.
That's right.
So how will Indonesia, or how can Indonesia keep complacency at bay?
Well, I think the good news is that in the last 30 years, the world as a whole has grown and developed more than the past 300 years, and so you can see which are the countries that have succeeded, and you can say, hey, why has country X succeeded? I mean, let's take Japan, for example. Japan was the first Asian country to modernize, because the Japanese saw how India, a country of 300 million people then, had been effortlessly colonized by 100,000 Englishmen. India saw how China, the world's most populous country, was humiliated by the British in the Opium War. And the Japanese said, oh, we'll be humiliated too. So what was the Japanese response? Was to go out and learn from the rest of the world. So they learned free market economics from the Americans, they learned the Napoleonic Code from the French, they learned how to build an army from the Germans, they learned how to build a navy from the British. So that, you know, the learning can be done very easily today. And best practices are now available very easily. Now, of course, there will be resistance and so on and so forth, but even if Indonesia takes 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards is okay. It's the long-term direction that's important.
Right. Now, how can the new government has taken place, Jokowi and his administrations, there has been daring decisions that has been undertaken by his administration, but at the same time, a lot of people are seeing there's not enough movement in the government right now to especially perhaps addressing the Asian economic community. What do you think is the most pressing issue at the moment that Jokowi and his administration has to address for us to open up our market?
Yeah, as you know, I was a great supporter of President Jokowi, and I wrote very many articles praising him, and I'm very glad that he won the elections so well. But I think what he did not anticipate and what I did not anticipate was that he would run into political problems so quickly after becoming the president. So, and I think as a dean of a school of public policy, what I tell my students at the Lee Kuan Yew School is that it is not just enough to get the economics right if you don't get the politics right. You have to manage the economics and you have to manage the politics. So I suspect that developing a political consensus within Indonesia that actually it is in Indonesia's national interest to continue to open up the economy is, I think, the task number one.
Okay.
Because if there is no political consensus, then there could be a backlash against it. And maybe this is a problem that other countries face. And United States, the world's second largest democracy, which used to preach free trade agreements, now President Obama is finding it very difficult to pass the TPP. because of opposition from the United States Congress. So it's not new. This is not a new problem, and other societies have to deal with. So I think I thought that, I suspect President Jokowi thought, oh, I won the elections, I can now just do the right things economically. Maybe not so easy. You have to fix the politics first.
All right, Kishore, we'll take a short break and we'll come back still with Kishore Mahbubani, Dean from the School of Public Policy of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, still talking about the future of Indonesia right here at the World Economic Forum on East Asia.